Ah, damn it. Sorry. Got logged out of whatchamacallit right there. All right, I'm going to cut this and try it again. Alright, let's see if this works. Had to switch something around there. But we should be good here. Okay, I think we're here. Alright, actually, I say this every week, but I've got a short one for you today. I'm kind of running out of streams to do that are one night. I might have a two-nighter coming up over Labor Day weekend, but we'll see. Anyway, this is a pretty short one. It's just about 27 photos. So, in theory, it should only take half an hour, but it'll probably take the full hour, like it always takes an hour. These are photos from 2006. Let me see what I forget what the date was here. March 2006. Baltimore Light Rail had. Man, it happened so long ago. It feels like it wasn't that recently. Baltimore Light Rail was originally built the way that light rail should be. It was designed to be inexpensive, and it was a lot of single. There was quite a bit of single track and passing siding. They had double track segments, not really passing sidings, but it kept with the original sort of trolley ethos. Of keep your costs down. You don't need a $1 billion light rail system. And that worked well. They built it in like 92. And about 10 years later, I guess they finally got some extra money. And they wanted to double track pretty much the whole line. And they shut it down in waves. They shut down the south end and they shut down the north end for over the course of like 2 years. Just to go and just get the construction sort of done with. So anyway, after it was all over, I went and did just some minor light rail riding. I've lived in Baltimore a while, but it's almost like Patco, but worse in Philly, where it's your local system. You just see it so much you get sick of it. And the light rail vehicles weren't really the most photogenic things, although this cool Maryland flag one was nice. Now they're all wrapped because they need money. Anywho, I was going to get this going. Here we just have some photos at Mount Royal Station. Just showing the junction off to the Baltimore Penn Station spur. This is interesting because this was the Penn Station spur was federally funded, so they went ahead and put in this 2-track flat crossover, even though it immediately narrows to 1 track right off screen there. So when the feds are paying, who cares? Oopsies, that's why it's so small there. Cool. All right, continuing on. So here's the better, and you can see this is when they were also messing around with the schedule a bit. And actually, they kept this going. It used to be that there was a Penn Station shuttle. This was not even too long ago, where they would just run it. You'd wait around at Mount Royal for forever, and then the Penn Station Shuttle would come in and, is the more appropriate term, I guess, would roll in and you'd catch. It was faster to walk to Penn Station than to take the shuttle. It was useless. It was unless you were disabled. It was pretty much useless because Mount Royal Station is only 2 blocks from Penn Station. So the Mount Royal Light Rail is only 2 blocks. You can just walk it in less than 5 minutes, and you'd easily spend double that waiting for the connector. More recently, they got some people in there who knew how to mess around with the schedules a bit, and they made it a Camden. The Penn Station shuttle turned into the Camden Yard shuttle, which provides a crucial third extra headway in the urban core. where you have a lot of just captive ridership. It's much, much better. Prior to the whole rebuild, the original Baltimore Light Rail service pattern was you'd have Hunt Valley trains. I gotta remember this. Hunt Valley trains would go to Glen Burnie, so they would run the whole line. And then Penn Station trains would run to the airport. And it pretty much served nobody well. Because anyone coming from north of the city would have to change trains to go to the airport. Now they just basically have 2 terminals at each end. I don't think they even try to. They just have certain trains will go to. I don't know what the service pattern is, but now they run 2 headways up to Timonium. You'll see that. Anyway, here we have this Mount Royal interlocking. You'll notice that at some of the downtown interlocking, specifically Camden Yards, Mount Royal, Camden Yards, North Ave, and right Mount Royal, where the trains are sort of running under street rules, restricted speed type of operation. They use these position light signals, dwarfs, as mainly just sort of interlocking just as like directional indicator type things. They don't even have reverse direction. These aren't even on the reverse direction. They have basically have stop signs. Kind of works like the VTA light rail in San Jose, where they only have stop boards, reflectors for reverse signaling. Someone was telling me that at the time there wasn't a lot of the original scheme. You can see there was that single blue stripe. Then they moved to this one. I think there was some trolley enthusiast made sure that the numbering was in the same font as the original Baltimore streetcar system. So here we are at the new Timonium station. Nope. This is the one. Nope. There it is. And what they did was, like I said, instead of just having a single headway running Hunt Valley to Glen Burnie, they have 2 services, Timonium to the airport, and then Hunt Valley to Glen Burnie, or they might mix them up. But either way, now you have 2 headways, 2 services running all the way from Timonium to Linthicum. So, and then 3 headways working in the center in the main business district. And I'm sure that it provides some additional cost, but they drastically increased service on most of the line, and made it. I mean, the light rail was usable, but it was just. And part of the reason that they weren't running, I guess, to begin with, because they had a lot of that single track and passing siding system. Come on. Here we go. Let's just zoom in real quick. There's Hunt Valley. You can see this isn't really the scale. There's downtown. There's Penn Station sort of in there. And there's Hunt Valley all the way up there off of 83. It's a good distance. Timonium is here right near the state fairgrounds, which we are in fact coming up to the state fair. Timonium is right there. It has a direct gate into the state fair from the light rail station. Very odd that I'm not sure how many. It's for a state fair. It is very close to the urban center, unlike a lot of states would just sort of stick them out in the middle of nowhere. Anyway, there's this interesting thing where the trains don't turn at Timonium, although they might have been doing it here. They head out to something called Texas Station, where there's a middle pocket track and a future infill platform that's only used currently by crews. And that's basically kind of a future station. No, they didn't just call it that. That was called Texas Station. I'm not sure if it's really a town, but there's a thing you see, Texas Station Court. There's like a Texas Station Road. Another interesting thing you can see here on the overhead is this giant Tilco quarry. Sorry, it's Lafarge North American. It might have used to be Tilcon. And this, if you've ever heard, like the San Diego trolley, this was before the FRA got anal about mixed light rail and freight. So San Diego streetcar, pretty much, they have a mixed operation. You can have a freight train that just goes and runs in, just they at least initially they didn't have to do time separation, and you just had freight that would run on the streetcar line because they got a waiver for everything. And from what I was told, they could run mixed, like a freight during. They didn't have to wait till overnight. I mean, it would probably be worthwhile to, but if they wanted to, they could run a freight during the day on this line. And the major freight service was to that quarry. And I wish I had the like operating rules or whatever, just to what they would give the freight train guys, because they would run with the light rail signals and all that jazz. These big giant stone trains coming down from the quarry there, and I'm not sure if you can see the connection was right in. There are two connections actually. They've both been, if not removed, pretty much. They've basically been removed. You can't even see where they were. I think when they rebuilt the light rail, they just ripped them out. There's one of them. You can see it right there. There, and the roads even. You can see where they've paved over there's a crossing there. Come on. You can see there. That's where the crossing, railroad crossing. You can see the switch right there. You can see the ties right there. And there's two suspicious paving chunks where the crossing used to be. And then the freight stuff with the cars would go right in there. And then there was, I think, a second crossing. You can see it right here. Again, two chunks of paving. They had a second. There it is. Right there. Hand throw switch, ties, paved over crossing, and that would head into this side of the yard. All cities have a quarry or an aggregate business near, as close to downtown as they can for construction projects. Boston has one. New York City has one along the Hudson in Metro North territory. It's just pretty common because you want to get, cities need concrete, a lot of concrete. So, again, these are just light rail pictures. Here's the original scheme. You can see I think these also used the same sort of lettering. Other fun fact, the light rail vehicles were numbered, again, because trolley people somehow had a seat at the table. The light rail vehicles were numbered in the same block as the Baltimore Streetcar Company, Transit Company, BTC, had their PCCs ended at 40 something, 4,000, whatever, and then they started the light rail vehicles at the same numbering that the next class of Baltimore streetcars would have been, which is nice. It's cute that they did that. Now I don't think there is any in this original blue livery these days. They are they're either in the Ocean Wave one, or they're wrapped, or there are a few I think that might still be in that flag livery. Also during the upgrade, I'm not sure I have any necessarily have pictures of this, but during the upgrade they went to cab signals on the line. At some point, I don't know what it was. It was the freight traffic on the southern end of the line died pretty quickly, and then north of the line you had Baltimore needed to get to the bulk loading terminal, which they sort of did via their own. They didn't have to run on the trackage for this. And then there was the vinegar factory and the quarry. And sometime as part of this whole rebuild process is when I think that the vinegar factory was the last place getting service, and when they did the shutdown, basically, they had to. The vinegar factory went to trucks at that point. They're like, they couldn't get served for a year or 6 months or not, whatever, however long it was. So, they used that opportunity to dump the rail freight service at the vinegar plant. The vinegar plant is right in Baltimore City, sort of near the Woodbury section of town. You can see it from 83 if you know what you're looking for. I'm pretty sure it is still a vinegar factory. It was one of those things, I think it was a distillery, and then maybe in Prohibition it went to vinegar, or I think maybe it was always vinegar, because they have those like wooden, they still have like all these wooden tanks. Might be shut down now. I'm talking about it, I might as well show it. So here we are at the quarry, way the heck north of town, on the original northern central branch. The vinegar factory is... There's the light rail yards. This is where the freight. This is the bulk loading terminal moved. I think they even the tracks are still there, but they don't do bulk loading anymore there. They do it somewhere else. And the vinegar factory was sort of right up. There's the Woodbury station. There it is. Wait, no. It's somewhere. It's up here. It is. The Fleischmann Vinegar Distillery. 1880s. Now the central unit of the Fleischmann Vinegar Distillery burns Phillips. Yeah, so it's still a vinegar distillery, which is cool. I mean, it's within spitting distance of like 5 microbrews, so it's the odd duck out. I'm surprised they're not making some sort of hopped beverage there. Anyway. Nope. That's the one. I have a new system for getting the names I use. That's a lot more efficient. Let's see how we got people here. Oh, hey, Brian and other folks. So, yeah, again, so this is, again, 2006 light rail photos. Anyway, so they went to, I'm pretty sure they're using an audio frequency cab signaling system. They don't really, you look at the impedance, I mean, if I see the impedance bonds, I know, but it's an automatic speed control type system. They have a little thing in the cab that just tells you the speed, and it also handles civil speeds and block, signal speeds. And that's, of course, outside the downtown street mode zone. So yeah, there is a crossover at Timonium, but most of the trains will pull out so they can lay over at the Texas station. That gets them out of the way. Here we see the once and future Mark Electric locomotives, or I will say once and current Mark Electric locomotives. Everybody thought they were going to be retired because the HHP, the Mark order of 4 HHP8s. Everybody thought that that they were going to go away when Amtrak, quote unquote, would stop. When Amtrak wouldn't fix them, but I don't know. They got them rebuilt. I think that's mainly because they realized that the SC44s. The Siemens Chargers that they got are simply not able to handle 8 bi-level coaches or 10 or whatever the rush hour trains are. Surprise! Yes, 4,400 horsepower minus HEP is less than 8,000 horsepower. Oh my! Like, it's called math. Even electric horsepower is way even different than diesel horsepower, simply because you have all you have all that power all at once on the electrics. So you go 4912. Mark still does a lot of this stuff. This is on the Amtrak platform at Penn Station, Baltimore. In front of you would be track 7, behind me track 6, and then we have the storage track. Mark, on that other track that you saw 4913 on was track 5. Track 5 is the stub mark, like arrival departure track for midday services. Anytime it's on a week, this looks like it's probably on a weekend. I was probably waiting for an Amtrak train. Unlike every night, overnight, or on the weekends, they just fill this storage track nose to tail with marked train sets. A bunch more of them are now stored up at the Martin State Airport station. All right, one more set here. This is gonna be a short one tonight. Let's see who's on. Hi, anyone who's on. Yeah. You're exactly right with the FRA and the if something happened in the 90s. Might be regulatory capture or some sort of you probably had a meeting of extremes. The safety people. I'm sure there was some reason that industry wanted to separate it. Probably it's probably lobbying from Bombardier because they didn't want to have, they were the only ones who had tier 2 compliant rolling stock, and they didn't want to get their passenger business undercut by light rail vehicles. And then you had the safety scolds. So that's all it takes to get one of those situations where, where you can have industry co-opt a safety or public interest movement to get what benefits industry under the guise of thinking of the children or stopping the violence or increasing safety or some bullshit like that. Usually they're just ploys by industry or some other financially motivated party. Not always. There's some legit groups out there, but once industry can align itself with so the groups, the civil groups they're fine, but industry will find a way to get in there, fund them, and find a way to make money off of just about anything. I want to have that. I'll just do the whole thing. I want to keep that cantilever gantry in there. It looks nice. I really miss the Mark GP40 WHs. They were kit bashed by MPI up in Boise using an original base and then the cab and the radiator flare of an old F45, some sort of SD45 derivative. I think they were F45s, and then they pulled... Anyway, they just basically put these together from the parts bin. The reason for the radiator flare is that they lengthen this whole back part here. This is the GP40. Everything there and there ahead of it is GP40. And everything behind it is your WH. Or that's the W. GP40, there's your W, wide cab, and your H is your head and power pack right there. There's still one in the service they use for the rescue locomotive. These are neat. I don't think I have a nice front view of them, but the cab was very low profile. Normally, like the wide noses, they're all the freights, they're all up and in your face. These Mark wide cabs sat very, very low. Here we have just the cab nose and the Charles interlocking signal. Oh, sorry, Paul interlocking. The name for St. Paul Street and St. Charles Street and St. Paul Street in Baltimore, which are the two main north-south thoroughfares. I'm going to actually rename this one. Paul used to be the old Union Junction with that big old Union Junction tower. But when Penn Station got rationalized, they made a new interlock. So B&P Junction became Charles, and Union Junction became Paul. I'm just going to get those signal numbers. There we go. And if you're wondering, what prompted the rationalization. It wasn't just spite or some misguided attempt to do whatever. It looks like it's going to be the 6N and a 4N. Let's see. Yeah, 6N, 4N, and 3N. Five-track doesn't go through. Anyway, the major reason that they re-signaled the entire Baltimore terminal area is because it was one of those PRR slow-speed interlockings, like Rockville, like Altoona, like a lot of Pittsburgh. PRR was all about saving money, or at least and when you had very complicated track work, just having everything running under slow speed simplified the interlocking dramatically. There's another one I'm probably going to rename. Just showing the Amtrak platform here. Yep, I don't know why I was trying to shoot the window here. It just was. It got me. I think one of these is bright and one of them's dark. Yeah, it's bright. 4013 window. Just blast through a couple of these here. If you're, one other thing, that right there, that is that little squarish, parallelogram, that hides a extendable rear view mirror. It's also seen on the Acela Expresses. In the Acela, they make a little bit more sense. Because, those have to go faster. In theory, they can't be open beyond some speed. I have seen them left open at very high speed, though. Okay, now I was going to finish up with some Baltimore Streetcar Museum photos. Here we have a... so this is interesting. Here we have their... So BSM has grown a bunch in recent years. Philadelphia does not have a dedicated streetcar museum. There's nothing in the Philly. There's no streetcar museums in the Philadelphia area. Baltimore Streetcar Museum is the closest one. A lot of the stuff in Philly also will make its way to Rock Hill Trolley Museum, 200 some miles away in the below Mount Union, Pennsylvania. But in recent years, BSM acquired a whole bunch of SEPTA's cast-offs. Now, one issue you get between SEPTA and this stuff is SEPTA is Pennsylvania streetcar gauge, which is 5 foot 2 1/4. Pennsylvania trolley gauge. Baltimore streetcar is its own thing. I'm gonna have to go to Google for this one. I think it's 4.9 and something. There we go. Sorry, 5 foot 4 1/2. Wonderful. If you're wondering why were they doing these oddball gauges, it was because they didn't want to get taken over by railroads, standard gauge railroads that would buy them up and use them for freight or try to take them over or whatever it was. Anyway, what's going on here is that they recently purchased some SEPTA equipment that is still gauged for 5 foot 2 1/2, and they won't run on the normal tracks. So they have them on these little temporary tracks there and there. This is what you can see here. This is a ramp, and what they have is they have trailers that will haul these PCCs around. I mean, transport rail cars, and the trailer backs up, and then they right there is where the trailer has the PCC of the streetcar and rails. The trailer backs up to there, and then they just they transfer it on this little ramp. Anyway. all they have to do with the PCCs is like reverse a wheel or put in an extra shim. It's actually not hard to. The trucks are all fabricated. They can just add like a spacer and expand the wheels to the right thing. They just had to do it. So anyway, here we see the Baltimore Streetcar Museum. This is an old Baltimore PCC. This was their one PCC for a while, 7407. They're still restoring another one, but they've gotten multiple SEPTA PCCs currently in service. One of them they use for their Santa car. And back there is the SEPTA work car 2187. I think that is now, they've repainted that in Baltimore Streetcar Museum colors, and they use that also as their work train. Okay. And here we have, this is the other trolley that they bought from Philly. And this is also in service. This got repainted in SEPTA colors. This is not technically owned by the museum. It is owned by Friends of, I'm pretty sure it's owned by Friends of Philadelphia Streetcars or Trolleys. It could be owned by a private individual, but it was one of those situations where they got it down to the museum because they bought it from SEPTA. There's no other place to run it, so they ran it down to the BSM, and the BSM uses it, and it's used pretty extensively along with the BSM's one, and they're glad to have it there. But I think it's one of those. It's owned by the streetcar folks, and it's sort of a a shared asset. But don't quote me on that. Oh wow! Before this causes no ends of frustration where I am. If you're in Philly, before PTC became a 3-letter, 4-letter word, in Philly it was the Philadelphia Transit Corporation, which is sort of like the Baltimore Streetcar or Baltimore Transit Corp (BTC). This is so now when you're in Philly, sometimes you get name confusion. People ask why I'm railing against the Philadelphia Transit Corporation was about as nice, is about as useful as the Positive Train Controller. They were a bus company that amalgamated the streetcar lines at some point, and they hated the streetcars. It was everything they could do to get rid of them, and that's why SEPTA's fundamentally anti-rail today, because it was always a bus company that round up with a rail system, and it's always been bus people all the way down, and they just don't like the rail. It's just not their thing. That's the pejorative. That's the complaint you get from people in the Philly scene. I'm sure that there are plenty of competent rail people in SEPTA, but the general idea is that SEPTA, Philadelphia Transit Company was a bus company. PTC basically turned into SEPTA. It wasn't some private company just fired everybody. No, they just started working for the state, and then suddenly, no wonder they don't like this stuff. Here we just see a PCC truck, and I said they're fabricated. Most of them you can unbolt. You can just bolt them together. There is a motor right there. I think it might be. I'm pretty sure it's 2 motors per truck. That one drives the first axle. The other one drives this one. There's your gearbox. Those are your frame rails. They're just tubular steel. These are all fabricated stuff. And of course, the big part of the PTC is they have the resilient wheels. That means that there's rubber sandwiches in there. And anyone who's ever been on a streetcar museum, it's just like there's a reason streetcars went away when cars came around. It wasn't a conspiracy by General Motors. Streetcars were slow, and the ride was rough. Go to a museum and you'll trundle along at up to 25 miles an hour, and you're shaking and shimmying, and it was better than walking, but not quite as good as a Model T. PCCs helped a lot, but the original streetcars. But anyway, what made the PCC help a lot was resilient wheels, which is you have this outer axle thing It's bolted, and the wheel is actually held between it, and there's rubber shims in there, so it stops a lot of the vibration from getting through. This right here is an electromagnetic track brake. If you're wondering how those work, you have a friction surface and an electromagnet, and when you really, really need that stopping force, this will just clamp down and try to glue itself to the rail thanks to electromagnetism, and the train just stops. The PCC will just stop on a dime. If the operator ever has to stop enough to use the track brake, A, you can hear it, and B, you're just gonna be flying. If you're standing up, you're gonna be flying. Here we have under the work car. Looks like they have a little cow catcher thing there. The undersides are I mean, there's a little bit of corrosion, but they're pretty good for something that was 50 years old by this point. Now, I should know, but I don't know, like, I don't know the details, if they're electric or electric pneumatic, or, you know, there's some of the, for those of you who don't know, PCC cars were a industry effort to improve trolley service during the 30s. They created a set of designs and patents and some stuff, and then there was no one company that made PCCs. They were made by everybody except Brill, so they were all slightly different. Some of them were pure electric with electric brakes. Others had pneumatic systems. The Baltimore one I know has an air compressor. I don't know about the Philly ones. I think they do. The air cars would also have air operated doors, but something tells me that the Philly ones are all electric. But please, I do not know. I am probably wrong. Here we just see the bright orange. I think they should have kept it in bright orange, but again, they did it up. They painted it in a red with Baltimore Streetcar Museum all over it. But here it is this is just weeks after it arrived. Here we have, this has got to be a weekend because they're actually out and operating. They're only really opening on Saturdays and some Sundays. This is the bridge that recently had so this is the CSX Baltimore Beltline. It's where the first electrification took place. It's the heavy grade that goes out from the Camden yards through under Howard Street, over and around the city, then up to Philly. Streetcar Museum started here in the 70s, getting the collection from the Baltimore Transit Corporation, which was stored at some park. They built everything out here, but they were always wary of the trains dropping crap. And they never would run a streetcar under the bridge when a train was going over. And for good reason, because they actually suffered a derailment that collapsed onto the tracks about 6 months ago, demolished the substation, broke down the wire, destroyed the track. They got it all. CSX paid for it. They got it all dealt with. But there's a reason that they're always a little wary of that. I'm just going to rename this one just to fit it. All right, looks good. Last call. Let's see. Yep, here we go. 7407 here. Nah, I can't really stabilize this one too much because it's right at the end there. And again, that's why they all look a little bit different. You know, this one's it's a PCC, but it looks different than the other PCC. The nose is slightly misshapen and other things. I'm sure if I went to the website or whatever, I could figure out what it was. I can go do that. I mean, like I think St. Louis Pullman might have built some. I don't know. I can go check. But here it is. I'm gonna have a little extra time here. Yeah, there we go. Let's do a quick sometimes these trolley museums are actually pretty good because trolley museums have surprising people will come in on Wikipedia and put in all the stuff. Yeah, Baltimore Transit Company, PCC, 7407 is Pullman standard. It's the only regularly operating Pullman PCC in any museum. Car was built in 1944, became the very last streetcar to turn a revenue wheel for BTC, November 1963. One of the latest acquisitions, Septipre PCC Streetcar, number 2168, unveiled in September 2009, built by the St. Louis Car Company in 1947, lasted SEPTA service 1992. Yeah, so that's what that. So the other ones were a St. Louis car, and I don't know if they're air or electric. But Baltimore Streetcar Museum is a great place. If you're a trolley person. You can definitely have. It's really easy to get. You do a member. It's easy to volunteer. You can get in there and get handle time operating. You can get on the how to the learn to drive the train process pretty quickly compared to a lot of other trolley museums. I've heard people when you go there, they'll say, especially with young people, they're always trying to recruit younger folks. They'll say, "Oh, it's no, your members can start, you can start doing the classes and other stuff." So I've heard good things about it. I mean, I lived right near. That's the thing is, I lived so close to it; it was within walking distance, but I was never down there that often. Anyway, that's everything. Let me see what we have in the stuff there. I don't know about what Bart's gauge was. I think that I don't know. I've heard that it was some sort of political play. To not be taken over by railroad in some way. On the other hand, I think that Bart might have honestly, Bart was it's one of those is literally space aged. It is a space age transit system, and I have a strong feeling that I heard that some planner somewhere just thought, oh, if we widen the gauge, we can get more people in the cars and take the curves faster. I mean, the whole point of BART and DC Metro was really to think outside the box and push the envelope. And I think it was just a quote-unquote advanced idea to have broad gauge to allow higher speeds and better cornering. And they didn't quite realize the ramifications. And it's not the equipment. All subway equipment is unique. You're going to get custom orders. You're not going to be sharing cars. Every transit system needs a custom order. What screws BART is that every piece of equipment, track machines, flat cars, everything has to be regauged for 5.6, 5.2, 5.4, whatever it is. That's what screws BART, not the cars. It's the equipment that they can just, DC Metro can go and buy some Whitcomb low-profile MOW diesels right off the shelf, but BART needs to get them super custom. Yeah. No, I mean, I know that there's that thing with GM, but honestly, the thing that killed the thing that really killed streetcars were killed in the 20s. You went from being able to ride a streetcar from Jacksonville, from Miami to Maine. You could basically hook together. I forget what it was. Someone wrote a book or a thing where you could just by connecting streetcar systems, you could run, and interurbans, you could go all the way from somewhere in the south up to Maine. And it was streetcars. They went everywhere because there was no other option. But as soon as motor vehicles came around, they were just so much. The public overwhelmingly chose their personal transit. And in the 20s is when most streetcars, the roaring 20s, wasn't even a depression yet. The majority of streetcar lines closed in the 20s. Depression did in the rest, and then all you had left was the city ones that sort of held on for a bit. I've heard about Amtrak and high electric rates. I still am trying to get the straight dope on that. Amtrak, I've heard so many different stories of why the electric rates are high, and I don't know what's true. But ultimately, Mark just realized that it could not maintain the schedule. It was having to run 2 SC44s, and they just said, "Screw it, we're gonna rehabilitate them," and they got them rebuilt and they're back in service. So anyway, that's it for now. I'm gonna sign off. 49 minutes. I did half the thing in still. I told you it always takes an hour. So thanks for a great night. I will see you guys next time. Maybe if I can find another one nighter, definitely. If not, I'm gonna have to wait for another 2 night stretch. So have a great